He has sold more than 170 million albums. He built a name so large that even people who never followed country music know exactly who he is. He walked away from all of it voluntarily at the height of his fame, came back on his own terms, and proved he could still fill stadiums well into his 50s. So how does a man like Garth Brooks find himself, at 63, fighting a lawsuit across 2 states, watching a brand new bar get publicly torn apart the week it opened, losing a major chunk of his core fan base over a beer, and reportedly considering leaving the country altogether? This isn't the story of one bad moment. This is several things collapsing at the same time. And the details are worse than most people realize. On October 3, 2024, a complaint landed in a Los Angeles court that immediately sent shockwaves through the country music world. The woman behind it, identified in court documents only as Jane Roe, had worked as a hairstylist and makeup artist for both Garth Brooks and his wife Trisha Yearwood. She began working for Yearwood in 1999, and Brooks brought her onto his personal team in 2017. By her account, the working relationship shifted quickly once he learned she was going through serious financial difficulties. According to the filing, he used that vulnerability as leverage. The allegations laid out in the complaint are detailed and serious. Roe claims that in 2019, Brooks invited her to travel with him to Los Angeles for a Grammy tribute event. When they arrived, she discovered he had booked a single hotel suite with one bed for the 2 of them. She alleges that in that room, Brooks sexually assaulted her. The complaint also describes a separate incident at his home where she claims he emerged from a shower and forced her hands onto his body while making explicit remarks. The filing covers a pattern of alleged behavior between 2019 and 2024, including sexual harassment, battery, and what her legal team described as a deliberate exploitation of her financial dependence on him. What made the story even more complicated was the timeline of how Brooks responded. Before Roe filed anything publicly, he had already filed his own lawsuit in Mississippi in September of 2024, under the name John Doe. His legal team argued she was attempting to extort him, demanding millions of dollars in exchange for silence. He compared the situation to having a loaded gun pointed at his face, saying that paying any amount would be the same as admitting guilt. He stated clearly that he was incapable of the behavior she described. The legal maneuvering that followed was messy. His team tried to have her California case dismissed and pushed to consolidate everything under the Mississippi court, a state with no anti-SLAPP protections that would have made it much harder for Roe to fight back publicly. Her attorneys called the Mississippi filing a bad faith move designed purely to suppress her ability to speak. A federal judge in California denied Brooks' motion to dismiss in December of 2024, though the case was temporarily stayed pending the outcome in Mississippi. Then in May of 2025, the Mississippi case was declared moot by a judge, leaving the California case still unresolved. As of early 2026, both parties had requested a trial by jury, meaning this is nowhere near over. And the longer it drags on, the harder it becomes for Brooks to fully move forward. To understand the full weight of what is happening to Garth Brooks right now, you need to understand exactly what he constructed over 3 decades. Because very few artists in any genre have come close to the level he reached, and that context makes the current situation significantly more significant. He was born on February 7, 1962 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the youngest child in a blended family. His mother, Colleen, had been a country singer herself with a recording deal at Capitol Records and had appeared on Ozark Jubilee in the 1950s. His father was a draftsman for an oil company. Growing up, the family held weekly talent nights at home where all the children were expected to participate. Brooks learned guitar and banjo as a kid, though his primary focus through high school was athletics. He played football, baseball, and ran track and field, and initially seemed more likely to pursue sports than music. By the time he was performing in small bars and honky-tonks across Oklahoma, the pull toward performing had overtaken everything else. He arrived in Nashville in the 1980s during a period when the city was flooded with people chasing exactly the same dream. His first trip there in 1985 ended in failure and he went back to Oklahoma. He enrolled at Oklahoma State University and graduated with a degree in advertising. Then he tried Nashville again in 1987, this time staying. What separated him from the hundreds of other artists who tried and failed wasn't just the quality of his voice or his songwriting. It was the way he performed. While most country acts of that era kept things relatively contained and traditional on stage, Brooks brought something closer to a rock arena experience. He leapt across stages, smashed guitars, used pyrotechnics and elaborate lighting rigs, and generated the kind of kinetic energy that audiences had only seen at rock concerts. Record executives who doubted him discovered quickly that he was not another traditional country act trying to fit in. He was actively rewriting what a country show could look like. His self-titled debut album came out in 1989 and started the climb. No Fences followed in 1990 and became one of the best-selling country albums in history. Then came Ropin' the Wind in 1991, which debuted at #1 simultaneously on both the Billboard Country Chart and the all-genre Billboard 200, a first in music history. The album wasn't a country chart success that crossed over. It hit both peaks at the same time, right out of the gate. The industry genuinely hadn't seen anything like it before. By the mid-1990s, he was filling stadiums that no country act had ever filled before. His Central Park concert in August of 1997 drew an estimated 750,000 to 1 million people, one of the largest concert audiences in American history. He is the only artist in music history to have released 9 albums certified diamond by the Recording Industry Association of America, surpassing the previous record of 6 held by the Beatles. He has won 2 Grammy Awards, 17 American Music Awards, 22 Academy of Country Music Awards, and 10 Country Music Association Awards. He has been inducted into both the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Songwriters Hall of Fame and became the youngest recipient ever of the Library of Congress Gershwin Prize for Popular Song. Total worldwide album sales exceed 170 million, making him by SoundScan Records the best-selling solo artist in American music history. His net worth as of 2024 was estimated at around $400 million. He was not merely the biggest name in country music. He was one of the most commercially successful recording artists in the history of the entire medium. That is the platform that is now under strain. And the distance between what he built and where things stand right now is what makes this story so striking. While the lawsuit was detonating in the fall of 2024, a completely separate situation had already created its own public relations damage earlier that year, one that arrived at the worst possible time. On March 7, 2024, Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood officially opened Friends in Low Places Bar and Honky Tonk at 411 Broadway in Nashville, right in the middle of the city's famous Lower Broadway entertainment district. The venue was massive by any measure. It spans 54,715 square feet across 4 floors, making it the largest honky-tonk on the entire strip. The first floor was built around a large live music stage. The second floor offered a balcony view of the main stage and more seating. The third floor held event space that businesses had booked years in advance. The fourth floor was an open-air rooftop bar called the Oasis, designed around a beach and tropical theme. There was also a members-only club tucked into the building. Yearwood designed the food menu herself, pulling from her cookbooks and her years of work on Food Network. The bar's concept had been years in the making. Brooks bought the building in 2021 and spent 3 years on the project. He talked about it constantly in interviews, describing in detail the kind of place he wanted to create. He said he wanted the Chick-fil-A of honky-tonks. He wanted people to walk in and immediately feel safe, feel welcomed, and feel like everyone in the room had good manners. He specifically said he wanted to hear classic country coming out of that bar, naming George Strait and Merle Haggard as the sound he was going for. He said he wanted it to feel like a true dive bar, just at a large scale. The entire opening was documented in a docuseries that premiered on Amazon Prime Video the same day the bar opened its doors. The reviews that came back within the first 2 weeks told a sharply different story. Complaints were immediate and spread quickly across Google, Yelp, and social media. Customers described prices that felt steep even by Broadway standards. One reviewer reported paying $37 for 2 drinks, comparing it unfavorably to neighboring bars. An undisclosed entertainment surcharge was appearing on bills without being posted anywhere visible, which generated its own wave of irritation. Some customers reported being unable to pay with cash at the bar, which struck many as particularly incongruous for a venue billing itself as a honky-tonk. The most consistent and loudest complaint, however, was about the music. Multiple reviewers reported that during their visits, the bar was not playing country music at all. One reviewer described hearing the Flo Rida song low during their visit. Another mentioned apple-bottom jeans being played while they were there. Others reported hearing Whitney Houston covers and songs by the Cranberries. One reviewer wrote that the place had no country vibe whatsoever and described it as looking more like a club in New York City than a honky-tonk in Tennessee. These complaints carried particular weight given that Brooks himself had specifically and repeatedly described wanting to hear classic country playing inside the venue. Not all of the feedback was negative. Some visitors praised the live bands, described the energy as excellent, and said the space itself was impressive. The venue continued to operate and remained one of the largest and most visible establishments on Lower Broadway. But the opening week narrative had already been written by the disappointed reviews, and those negative impressions spread across the internet during the same year the lawsuit broke. For a man who had always staked his reputation on delivering what he promised, the gap between the vision he had described and what some customers found when they walked in was a specific kind of damage that hit his brand in a targeted way. What a lot of people covering the current situation tend to skip over is the fact that Garth Brooks had already lost a significant portion of his core audience over a separate controversy months before the bar even opened, and well over a year before the lawsuit became public. In June of 2023, Brooks was participating in a panel discussion at the Billboard Country Live event in Nashville when he was asked about his upcoming bar. He mentioned that friends in low places would serve every brand of beer. At the time, Bud Light was in the middle of a massive consumer boycott driven by conservative fans after the brand had run a promotional partnership with Dylan Mulvaney, a transgender influencer. Other country music artists had made very public statements against serving Bud Light. Kid Rock had filmed himself shooting cases of it with a rifle. John Rich and Travis Tritt had both announced they wouldn't serve it in their venues. The conservative country music fanbase had made boycotting Bud Light a cultural and political statement, and many of them expected